Today, we're going to talk about a guy who built one of the world's biggest tech companies. But here's the twist. He didn't have an MBA or a background in coding. Nope, he had the mindset of a high school teacher. But before we get into that, let me ask you something. Think about that one big idea you have, that project, that company, that thing you've always wanted to do. What's that little voice in your head that stops you? For a lot of us, it sounds kind of like this. You probably think, I'm just not qualified, right? I don't have the right degree. I've never done this before. I don't know the first thing about tech. And look, those feel like totally logical reasons to just not start. They feel like deal breakers. But what if I told you the founder of Alibaba, a massive multi-billion-dollar tech giant, said this exact same thing? Jack Ma himself said point blank, he knew nothing about business. And even crazier, he knew nothing about computers. So if it wasn't tech skills or business school, what was his secret sauce? Well, his secret is actually found in what most of us would see as his biggest weaknesses. He basically flipped the script and turned his lack of qualifications into his greatest strength, an incredible, deep understanding of people. And let's be really clear here. Jack Ma was not some kind of child prodigy. He struggled in school, big time. He failed his university entrance exams not once, not twice, but 3 times. His grades were almost always near the bottom of the class. This kind of start forces you to think differently about what success even looks like. So he made a huge strategic shift. He figured, okay, I'm probably not going to be the #1 student when it comes to grades. So I'm just going to change the game. His new goal? Forget being the smartest kid in the room. He wanted to be the student that everyone liked and that everyone could work with. He basically decided to major in people. And you know what? It worked. He got elected president of his university's student union. And then, get this, he became the president of the entire city's student federation. That meant he was representing over 100,000 students. His job had nothing to do with test scores. It was all about listening, connecting, and serving other people. So you see, in the end, his most important education didn't come from any textbook. It came from learning how to work with people, figuring out what they really need, and how to actually help them. And that became the foundation for everything that came next. All right, so let's move on to the next chapter. After he finally graduated, his first job was as a teacher, and he did that for 6 years. And it was here that he learned 2 really powerful secrets about leadership. The first secret was, honestly, just brilliant. He said, to be the most loved teacher, you have to do 2 things. First, you have to actually be a good teacher, obviously. But the real trick? End class 5 minutes early. Why? Because let's be real, no student likes a teacher who runs over time, no matter how amazing the lesson is. He understood what his customers, the students, really truly wanted. And that little trick points to the second, much deeper lesson. A teacher's real goal isn't to be the smartest person in the room. It's to live out this idea right here, to genuinely want your students to become better and more successful than you are. That selfless idea of empowering others, well, that would become his North Star in business. So how in the world do you take that teacher's mindset and use it to build a global tech empire? Well, Jack Ma did it by completely redefining what it means to be a CEO. We all know the textbook definition, right? The chief executive officer, the big boss, the person whose job it is to execute the strategy and get results. It's very top-down. But Jack Ma came at it from a totally different angle. He asked a different question. What if a leader's main job isn't just to command and control, but to develop people? What if it's not about executing a vision, but about empowering others to build it with you? And here's his answer. He saw himself not as the chief executive officer, but as the chief education officer. His job wasn't to be the best person on the team, it was to find the best people and then help them become even better. So what does a chief education officer actually do all day? Well, according to him, it was pretty clear. First, you hire people who are way smarter than you are. Then, your job is to make sure they can all work together as a team. You train them, you help them build discipline, and you support them so they can achieve things they never even thought they were capable of. So, all this sounds great, right? This whole teacher philosophy is really inspiring. But did it actually work? Well, the proof is in the pudding, but the timeline is just as important as the final result. Alibaba got started way back in 1999.
Not in a fancy office, but in a tiny little apartment with 18 friends who just believed in him. And it wasn't until 2014, a full 15 years later, that the company had the biggest IPO in world history.
And here's the most important takeaway. That incredible success that everybody saw in 2014, it was not an overnight miracle. Not even close. It was more like the final exam after a 15-year class built on patience, persistence, and a crazy focus on growing people. And that brings us back to one final thought. Jack Ma's lack of tech skills forced him to become a world-class expert on people. What looked like a weakness became his absolute superpower. So what about you? What's that one thing you think is your biggest weakness that if you just looked at it from a different angle might actually be your greatest strength?